The latest land registry data shows avoidable requisitions are continuing to fall, which I said is great. What should firm take from this second data set, and where should they focus their attention next?
Well, firstly, thanks for organising this. It's a fantastic opportunity just to talk about the avoidable requisition data set. Quite a mouthful, but it's been really well received, and I'm really thrilled about that. This is the second one we've published. In total, we've sent out 3 now, as we worked with the industry to build a partnership to say, before we published any data, we shared what was going out. And as you say, 7% reduction this time in the last 6 months. And if you remember, in the first time we put this out before this, in the first set that wasn't published, in the first published set, we saw a 29% reduction. So over that 18-month period, we're really, really pleased to see what's happening and what's being involved and engaged with in a partnership to help everybody, because those requisitions are time consuming and costly for everybody. But also those requisitions mean we can move faster, and that, I know, is what we're trying to do: faster, better, easier services. So what should people take away from it? I think firstly, congratulations to everybody for all the work they've done so far, but I think we can all agree there is more to do, and we can help each other to achieve that and to deliver more. I think they should also look at the data very much as what is happening now. I am aware that obviously people will want to look at the last time they got data, but I think what they've got to remember is volumes change, application types change, and therefore what they are sending in and what we are seeing is slightly different. So I wouldn't be too concerned if I was a firm if it was moving around just a little bit. I don't think that's a major issue. What I would say is look at your competitors, look at the market. Obviously, when the data was released, we give a top line figure out. So you'll see how everybody else is doing and get a figure for how everybody else is engaging and working towards reducing those avoidable requisitions as much as we can through delivering complete and correct applications, which makes everybody's life easier and delivers what everybody wants.
So, where have you seen the greatest improvements?
It's an interesting one. We've seen better. If you look at what we sort of look at the most, which is missing information, very much variations in names between what's on the documents and what we're getting in. So the historic documents, the official copies, perhaps the deeds, and what we're actually seeing on the forms that are being sent to us. Identity, plans and descriptions are just missing bits and paper. I mean, one of the things that you will hear me talk about is just that simple attention to detail that I know is a challenge when you're dealing with mass applications where you get a lot of paperwork going through. But I think the biggest reduction we're seeing is that attention to detail is definitely coming through. So a 4-page deed with 1 page the wrong way around when it's scanned. So we get 3 pages and then we get a blank page. Someone's checking those. Someone's looking through them really quickly and spotting those particular mistakes, because I know that's infuriating for everybody involved in the chain. ID is getting better, and I think we're seeing a really big change in everybody really taking a care and interest in that. And when I talk about ID, it's making sure that the documents are right, but also witness ID. We talk a lot about filling in those forms correctly, and I understand if people aren't putting in a postcode, because to them it's obvious where that person lives. That street is perhaps round the corner from where they live or they work. But when you're dealing with the land registry, we have to make sure the integrity of the register is everything, because that's absolutely the baseline that we all need. So that simple lack of the last 3 letters of a postcode is going to cause us to requisition you, which is going to cost money, take time, and slow everybody down. So that's where we're seeing the most improvement. But as I say, we're really, really excited to see the movement that we've got to date. But we also realise that there's a way to go to actually develop this and to move it on further.
So, Kate, would you agree with what Roger has said? Are those the
Yeah,
changes and improvements, sorry, you've seen?
yeah, no, definitely. I mean, from our point of view, when the first data was released, was it around about October time off the top of my head? I mean, PCS, I think our percentage was 7.17% for avoidable requisition. So it wasn't horrendous, but obviously it could do a lot better. So we knew that there was work to be done from our side, and for us to pinpoint exactly where it was going wrong, where we could get that percentage down. And we've actually been having monthly meetings with the Land Registry, and they've given us the data as to what the avoidable requisitions were, which was really, really helpful, because then we could then go back to our post-completion team to then recognise what we could do better and make our processes better to actually avoid them. So.
And Kate, that's exactly what I think we're all asking to do. So just to be clear, we write to thousands of customers, and just in case there's any confusion, if you didn't get it, let's just clarify that up a little bit. To make the statistics seem fair, you have to put in at least 10 applications every 6 months, because we do get people who put in, say, 4 applications in a 6-month period, and 2 of them were wrong. Suddenly they get a 50% rating. I think that would be unfair and would actually be something that wouldn't be supportive. So if you're not getting one, that's a potential reason why. After that, we write to thousands of customers. And as you say, Kate, we give them the top line percentage, but then we break it down for everybody. So every firm is getting, you made X number of these mistakes, X number of those mistakes. And as you say, what we're trying to do is to help everybody build a clearer understanding of, it's this area you need to look at. And that's when we're really sort of relying on sort of the professionally trained or the more experienced people within your post-completions team to say, well, this is the area where we can improve this, or this is the check that we should put in before we hit submit. And I think that's the issue, that, you know, if you rush to submit, you could end up creating your own delay. And it's something that, you know, the problem for us is we know that the industry relies on the integrity of the register, that it's the backbone, the foundation of how conveyancing works. Therefore, it has to be right, it has to be accurate, and it has to be the data that you can rely on. That's why we end up sending out the requisitions. So I think the other thing to talk about is actually the support. It's great that you're getting support, Kate, but also the customer training team. You know, we are in June putting on 2 what we call application support workshops, and we'll go through the biggest in terms of the number of avoidable requisitions. So we'll actually sit down and go, this is what we mean by this. This is what we want when you send us in the information. This will help to give what we have committed to doing, which is making it easier and faster and better. You know, for those of you who perhaps don't follow the intricacies of how we communicate with the ministry, our chairman wrote a letter back, and it was very clear. He said, look, we know we've got to make it better for customers, faster and easier. And this data is a part of that process, but also the support we wrap around it externally. And if you want, we can talk about things that we're doing internally as well, because we realize that we need to support you as much as possible. So continual looking at practice. What are we doing internally? Are the requisitions actually fit for purpose? Is there some way that we can look at a requisition and interpret it in a different way so it doesn't require it to be sent out? And the other one is working with all of you to provide the best technical support. So validation, and trying to stop them actually coming in the same way that a lot of firms, when you put in your credit card, for example, online, would say that's not a valid credit card. We're using that same technology and saying, hang on, that piece of information doesn't quite match with what we're doing. So that's it. And by the 1st of November this year, all of the applications that come into Land Registry will have that ability to be pre-checked on these, what we call avoidable requisition points. So again, technology, process, and partnership. I think it's the best way that we are to actually make what everybody wants, which is that faster, easier service. Last thing that I haven't mentioned is training, and I think it's really important. A lot of people could say, well, hang on, this is great. You're pushing a lot of this responsibility out to the customer. Well, also what we're doing internally is we're absolutely improving our training and our support and our development of our caseworkers. So again, the people who are actually looking at applications, to make sure that they're not making mistakes that perhaps in a way that are wrong. And we admit that, you know, just like, you know, people who send in requisitions once in a while, things go wrong, applications come through that are wrong. I'm sure we are not, you know, we are humble. We know that we are doing the same thing, but we're working very hard, not only to ask you to train your staff, but we're also very hard working to make sure that we're developing and training our staff so that doesn't happen as well. That's the kind of wraparound that we really see the data being a cornerstone of, an anchor with, but obviously the bigger offer that we can do together.
I think you briefly mentioned the rush to submit. Is there a perceived misconception that that rush is being forced upon conveyancers by some lenders?
I can't really speak for lenders and I can't really speak for conveyancers. Perhaps that's a question for Kate to sort of talk about that relationship. But as I said, from our perspective, especially when if you look at the way that we're, recently we put out, Neil Sashdev, who was our chairman, wrote a note saying, just under 50% of some of the applications that come in. So that's the applications to update titles we're doing in a week. So the idea that you're lodging it and then you can pop back in and you can sort out the errors on that, you might actually get caught out. If you wait a little bit longer, get it right, you won't get the requisition. So again, I realize, and we were, again, apologies for the backlog. I know it was a real issue, and it went, we're working really, really hard on it. But it's clear to us that we are working very hard with, we're working to reduce that as much as we possibly can, and we'll continue to focus on that because we know it's an issue that's not only causing issues for the industry, but it's causing issues for your clients who are using it, the people who are living in the property or own the land. We'll continue to work on that as well. So again, lots happening in terms of speed. But if you think you can put something into the system and then catch up later, sometimes you miss out, and that's where we have problems about people feeling that that's the way to do stuff.
You've headed me off at the pass well there with the backlog, Roger, because I was going to raise that. And also the requisitions that are being asked aren't always consistent, perhaps. But just going back to you, Kate, do you feel there's a rush to submit your applications?
Yeah.
If so, where does that come from?
It definitely comes from the lenders, because if we don't submit them within a certain amount of time, then we obviously get the chasers, we get asked why it hasn't gone in, and it might be that we're waiting for other documents like certificates of compliances or something like that. So we do feel massive pressure just to get them in as quick as possible, which then in turns creates requisitions if they're not perfect. So it is a fine balance, really, just to try and get it, the ones that we can get right. But then there are going to be ones where we're waiting for stuff. It's impossible not to. But like from the lenders, we also get chasers for all the first registrations, which we know take a long time, and the pressure from that side of it is a lot for our teams to take. So they do feel they have to almost rush for it to get it in. So
I might be mistaken, but I thought these days lenders could be updated via HMLR.
yeah. Yes, they can be, but so they can do on the lender exchange and the LMS system, but a lot of the time we still get spreadsheets of files that we still have to put on, and then if you sometimes, especially I think on lender exchange, if you can't complete one part, then you can't move on to the next part and stuff like that. So the tech of it could be a bit better, I think, in terms of, because it's not, each case is so different as well, and there might just be a different issue on one of them to another. But yeah, we can update them to a certain extent, but it doesn't stop them requesting updates as well at the same time.
Okay, thanks. I mean, Louise, Adele, have you got any comments to make on what we've said so far, particularly that last comment, maybe?
Yeah, I think from our perspective, like, it is a big reminder of all the different plates that conveyancers and conveyancing firms sort of constantly have to spin. Like everyone's aligned, I think, in the goal. And so it's exciting to sort of talk a bit more about this today. But yeah, it is just a reminder of all the things that they're sort of having to do at this stage when their clients have got the keys, they've completed in terms of funds and things like that. But the pressures and the admin time haven't really stopped for the law firms here.
I think just to add to that, I think the role of I know not every firm has a post-completion department, but I think the role of post-completion has grown massively over the years. It's not just about getting the AP1 in to the land registry. It's so much more than that now. They've got to update the lender exchange, the LMS. They've got to deal with management companies and notices, and it's so much bigger. And now with all the stamp duty stuff that's coming in, it's probably going to increase that even more. But I feel like the role is misconceived in that they think, oh, it's just putting the AP1 in, scanning a few documents and that's it, and it's that's the easy part. So it's much more than that.
Yeah, I think just on that, I think Kate's absolutely right. Like, the AP1 is probably the easiest part to do, especially when you've got tools from the likes of InfoTrack, etc., that integrate with your system. It's actually pretty straightforward. It's everything that comes before, where our teams also spend most of their time is not spent on actually doing the submission. It's on all of those checks before submission, making sure the file's ready to actually then be submitted, so there's no requisition. That's actually where most of the work is done. And something that Kate mentioned about sort of files missing, and it's something that's in the data as well, that the leading cause of requisitions, Roger, if I'm not mistaken, now is missing documents. Is that
Yeah.
right? Yeah, and that's something that we see a lot, you know. I mean, again, coming back to tools like InfoTrack, they do a great job at sort of looking at the variations in names and looking at values and inconsistencies. But you know, if the documents are not there, then what are you going to do? And add to that the pressure that Kate's talked about from the lenders and the rush to submit, then you've got this perfect storm, which is why that requisition rate on missing documents is as high as it is.
Before we just go to the second question, then, if I come back to you quickly, Kate. So Roger mentioned training, I think internal for HMLR and external for conveyancers and law firms. Do you take advantage? You obviously train internally. Do you take advantage of the HMLR training that they produce?
Yeah, definitely. So as I said, we've been having meetings with a designated person at the Land Registry for since about October time. And I think every other month she does a designated training session with our team, which is brilliant. And like, for example, I think there was one last month for new build registrations, because we do a lot of new build work. So that is really helpful, because I think, again, you're looking at the data and what the Land Registry are looking at, and then how can we improve our processes. And I'm a massive advocate for training anyway, so it can never do any harm, can it? But I think the Land Registry now have actually got like a university section, which is great for if we have new people come in to take up that role, then we can direct them there initially, without then having to organise an actual session. But we've found it massively helpful in terms of training our teams, and that can only make things better.
Okay, thanks. Roger, do you want to comment on the University of HMLR or whatever the term?
It's lovely, Kate, that you're using everything we do. Let me break it down really quickly for you. We run a customer training hub, which is where you will find a large amount of information. We start with what we call the essentials pack. So those people that are brand new to the business, who've never perhaps worked in Land Registry, that's the essentials pack. And again, that's because of feedback saying, help us when new people come to the industry. It is complicated, and if you can support them through that initial period, then we do, as you said, the application support webinars and things of that nature, where we will just be looking, as I said, 2 times in June, we'll be looking exactly at the figures that are coming out and saying these are the big ones that we can do to support those internal discussions within organisations across England, Wales and Scotland as well, where people are working in the English and Welsh market and saying, okay, how can we get better? So again, we're not asking you just to look at this data and be isolated. We're asking really for you to join us and engage with it. And just to talk about new builds, absolutely, Kate's absolutely right. We have a specific training module, which is just for new builds, because that's so important in terms of not just looking at what we call the avoidable requisitions, but looking at that wider, more niche area of, okay, this is the new build work. And again, there's something exciting coming up later in the year. We're expanding that. So we've looked at that, and we've got feedback from people like Kate saying, that's great. Could you just expand that and look into a different area? And also within the month of June, we'll be putting in a first registrations module, again, into the training hub for people who deal with those areas, to help them understand what the information we're looking at, why we're looking at it in a particular way, and therefore helping people. So great, Kate, that you're using it. I'd encourage everyone to use the training hub, join and sign up for our sessions. And the last plug, because it is a plug, thank you, Rob, is we do actually now have a quarterly newsletter that goes out calling First Right Time. And again, it's full of that support, but it's also there just to have a discussion and an engagement. And anybody in your firm can sign up for that. So if you have an issue with just wanting to get hold of that very simple push piece of outgoing communication and support, get in contact with me. But if not, search for it. It's just HMLR Training Hub on any of your favorite search engines, and you'll find the area to go and have a good look around and support it. But Kate, great that you're using it, and it's really lovely to be supportive of the industry with providing this information.